Today, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg and New York State Governor George Pataki gave a 6-month update on recovery and cleanup efforts around the site of the World Trade Center. They spoke to reporters at City Hall for about 40 minutes.
Get up, good luck.
It is easy to tell which microphone is...
Yeah. This is mine.
Good morning. We would like to take the opportunity today to post everybody on the progress that has been made in the recovery efforts since the terrible tragedy of September 11th and the plans going forward for the immediate future, not what the long-term plans are for the World Trade Center site, but rather focus today, if we could, on improving transportation in the next few months, traffic patterns and that sort of thing. So we'd be happy to take some questions afterwards in terms of long-term planning, but that's not the purpose today, and we're trying to take care of our audio-video needs right now. George?
Yeah. We think it's appropriate at this point to give a little report back as to what has happened over the course of the last 6 months. September 11th has changed all of us. We'll never forget that day. We'll never forget the people we lost, and we'll never forget the horror that we've been through. But I think it has in some ways made our city, our state, and our country stronger and better. And since September 11th and continuing until right now, I've never seen the level of cooperation among all levels of government, city, state, federal, and the community groups and not-for-profits and private sector and labor, everyone pulling together to help us recover. And we will now give you, Mike will run through with a analysis of what has happened since September 11th, but I think the overriding point here is that the progress that is being made is probably more than anyone would have anticipated or could have anticipated in the afternoon of September 11th. And the reason is the level of cooperation is something that I've never seen in my lifetime. And I just want to thank all the city, state, Port Authority, and other representatives who are here today, because they have done a tremendous job. And as you go through this report, you'll see the dozens, literally dozens of different agencies that have been involved. And there has been cooperation second to none. So, Mayor?
Fine. Why don't we start with remembering why we are here. There were 2,830 people who lost their lives. And while we're going to talk about economic development and what we're doing for people who work and live and shop in the area, we should not forget that 2,830 of our friends, relatives, co-workers, 400 of New York's finest and bravest, Port Authority, police officers, gave their lives to save others. And we want to make sure that respect is shown to them and to their families, and you should not forget that the recovery effort continues downtown. Yesterday we found 4 more bodies, and we hope that we will find many more between now and roughly May, when the recovery effort is finished. But we're going to focus on economic activity. But in the backdrop, remember, Monday is the 6-month anniversary of the terrible tragedy. There will be 2 ceremonies to dedicate the 2 temporary memorials, the Sphere at Battery Park and the Tribute of Light at the close to the World Trade Center site. There is a constant effort to monitor the quality of life, air quality, and we'll take questions about that afterwards if you have. And while we are talking here about specifics, what you have to remember is in the background, all of the different agencies that have an interest are going through a planning process. We've said that we first want to recover, and then we want to let everybody have their say. I don't think the fact that we don't have specific plans yet for what we're going to do with the site should lead anybody to think that a lot of the best minds aren't working on this as we speak. In fact, they are.
If I might comment on that chart, you can see that the removal of the debris is going dramatically ahead of schedule. I think that represents, I think it's 83% of the debris has already been removed. We are far ahead of schedule. And the other point I'd like to make is that the cost is dramatically lower than had been anticipated in the weeks after September 11th. And it's a tribute to everyone working down there, the private sector, the construction trades, and the job the city is doing in monitoring the cleanup of that site, which is going incredibly well.
Perhaps the most impressive thing is so far we have not had one serious injury or death to any construction worker. If you realize how much heavy equipment is moved around both there and at the landfill site where the rubble is then sifted through, that's really quite amazing. And our number one priority is to try to continue that great safety record. There still is a large commitment of people down there in addition to the construction workers. The fire department has 400 personnel still working at the two sites, and we did lose 343 of New York's bravest. So far, we've hired 2 new classes of 300 and have another class coming in. So we'll have hired 900 new firefighters by 2002. That is enough, we think, to maintain or in fact increase the total number of firefighters that the city has. My recollection is it's going up by 70-odd firefighters. We have ordered or had donated to us enough new equipment so that the fire department will be back to full strength. We'll never be able to replace the experience and the lives that we lost, but their legacy has to be that we come out with a stronger, better fire department, including looking at our procedures. The fire department has always had, as do a lot of city agencies, whenever there's a serious incident, particularly if it includes a fatality, we take a look to see whether or not we could have done things better. And we have an obligation to everybody who lost their lives to make sure that we do that. McKinsey on a pro bono basis is helping us go through that.
Mike, if I might comment, the Port Authority police loss of life, I believe, represents the largest loss of life in a single incident by any police force in the history of America. We lost not just the top leadership of the port, people like Neil Levin, we lost our top law enforcement officials, and we lost all of those police officers. And the Port Authority yesterday began its first class. I think it's 80 or 90 new police officers to fill the ranks and make sure that they continue to be able to do the great professional job they've done.
Along those lines, Commissioner Kelly has added some capabilities which I don't think any local police department ever had before. A deputy commissioner for counterterrorism, a deputy commissioner for intelligence, a first responder training program, and just taking some general steps to make sure that the NYPD has better communications than ever before with all other law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Unfortunately, I think one of the lessons that we sadly learned out of November 11th is that the oceans aren't quite as big as we had thought, and local policing really has to take a look at what's going on in the rest of the world.
And if I might comment as well, we have had tremendous improvement in coordination and communication between the New York City PD and our new Office for Public Security that Jim Kallstrom heads up. You all know the incident where the mayor and myself were not apprised of a low-level security alert that the federal government made back in the early weeks after September. Mayor Bloomberg and I both received a call yesterday from Governor Ridge assuring assuring us that whenever they have any credible threat, that both the city and the state will be advised of that threat. I'm confident that the communication system already is significantly improved and that it will continue to be as strong as it possibly can.
As the bottom of the slide shows, as the progress continues, the resources devoted to the World Trade Center site from the NYPD, and for example, has been declining. It is quite amazing that the crime statistics show that we can continue the reduction in crime throughout the whole city. At the same time, today, all of the law enforcement agencies at a state, federal, and city level have to worry about something that a year ago they did not. But it just goes to show if people work together and work smarter, we are able to do more than ever before. OEM has been the basic coordinator for since September 11th. OEM was started by Mayor Giuliani to ensure cooperation between all interested parties, and Richie Scherer has done a spectacular job. We have a site which OEM renovated at 51 Chambers Street, which did handle all of the family issues. Now that is dwindled down to a small number and is being taken care of at a site donated by Bear Stearns in Midtown. But that same site is there to help those in the area who had losses, business losses, job losses, that sort of thing. We also did lose a command center, which was on a high floor of 7 World Trade Center. We did announce about a week or so ago that we have a temporary site that should be running very soon, and that we have found a location for a permanent site, which will take about a year, year and a half. I can rest assured that there is another site elsewhere in the city that is a fully functional backup site, so that if something should happen to this part of Manhattan, the government could operate elsewhere in the city and have all of the coordination that it really needs. Maybe the governor wants to comment on these. The state and the federal government have had an amazing number of programs that really have started to make a difference.
They really have made a difference. First, from the human side, we worked with the federal government and the city government to get waivers so that people who lost health care coverage as a result of this attack could immediately access Medicaid. And as you see, almost 400,000 people have signed up and been provided health care benefits through the disaster Medicaid program. Not on the chart, we had almost 6,000 workers' compensation claims, people injured, file claims, and they are being processed as quickly as possible. You can see that we have the Financial Service Center up. Our Crime Victims Board has given out, I think it's more than $7 million in assistance to families who have needed the help, and we will continue. As Mayor Bloomberg said earlier, the single most important thing is the emotional and the human side. It's to help the families who have suffered and lost loved ones. It's to help the families who have lost their jobs, lost their source of employment, lost health care benefits. And we're going to continue to work together as strongly as possible to make sure that these programs and additional programs to help those families are moving forward.
One of the real issues is to try as quickly as possible to let people who live and work in Lower Manhattan get back to having, being able to have more normal lives. That centers around transportation as much as anything. The governor and I did announce the other day the construction of 1 pedestrian bridge. There will in fact be 2 pedestrian bridges over the West Side Highway, Liberty Street and Rector Street, I think is the other one. Right. But what we have to do is to find some ways to make it easier and more desirable to work and live downtown. Tim Carey, who's the president of the Battery Park City Authority, tells me that since the governor instituted, or the governor along with the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation instituted a subsidy program for rents downtown. In fact, a lot of people have come down there to try to rent and buy apartments. And I think I've said a number of times, if you want to find great space. Just look slightly into the future, and Lower Manhattan will be a better place to live, and there's enormous values available. Today, the Wall Street Journal and New York Magazine both this week had articles talking about the values and how people are rushing down there to find space. There is commercial space available, there is office space available, but there's also opportunity. And this shows you the size of the frozen zone. The frozen zone, this was 14th Street. Frozen zone originally was everything below 14th Street, and you can see down here how small an area that is. And what that says is in the other area, life is back to as close to normal as you can be after a terrible tragedy.
And if I might comment, when you see the original map with the frozen zone 14th Street South, when people talk about Lower Manhattan redevelopment, oftentimes they just focus on Ground Zero or the surrounding area very closely. Our redevelopment efforts are aimed at all of Lower Manhattan. If you look, you'll see that huge areas of Lower Manhattan, including all of Chinatown, were dramatically impacted. Thousands of small businesses, the garment industry, because they didn't have access for a long period of time, and they lost traffic after access was restored. So our economic programs are aimed not just at this Ground Zero and this surrounding area. We have 4 concentric areas extending out, and we do provide economic health all the way up to the original frozen zone of 14th Street.
This next few slides show you the progress that has been made. 7 out of the 11 subway stations have already reopened, and with the exception of Cortlandt Street, the rest will reopen by this fall. So subway service, the good news is, will be back to reasonably normal. The perhaps most impressive thing is what we've done with transportation. We've opened up Church Street, the FDR Drive, and West Street for northbound access. The single occupancy ban and the reduction by 30% in the number of parking permits and the vigorous enforcement of parking regulations has dramatically reduced the number of cars parked that blocked access to Lower Manhattan. And you can now drive, and instead of hitting a wall of traffic, you can continue on down in a ways you haven't been able to in a long time. The bus service basically is back to normal, and the ferry service continues to be enhanced. In rough numbers, there were 130,000 people a day who took the path tubes to Lower Manhattan. Today, 65,000 come in by ferry, so roughly half of that service has been replaced with ferry service. We have appointed, incidentally, a Lower Manhattan construction coordinator, which we think will help the different utilities and everybody else not have to rip up the streets multiple times, but getting everybody, to the extent that it is humanly possible, to work together. Individual streets, Church Street was repaved last night and open to additional express buses. April 1 is really the next big date. At that point, you will have, much earlier than expected, 3 lanes north and south on the West Side Highway, Route 9A, and the opening of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. That will make a major difference in how you can get around the city. The East Side Pier 6 transfer station is effectively closed, and we will be repaving the road through the underpass around southern Manhattan, so you can come in on the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel April 1st and go right around and up the east side, or continue on up the west side. Let me get back here. Hang on. Oops. Okay. One of the most important things is to continue to improve and replace the infrastructure, power and steam and communications. And we're making amazing progress. Both Con Ed and Verizon have been working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A massive task, but that continues, and Con Ed was back very quickly, and Verizon is back as fast as they could manage to arrange it.
Just, Mike, on that last line, you see the focus is on redundancy. It's not just restoring the Con Ed service and the Verizon service that existed on the morning of September 11th. We've been in constant touch with financial service companies, not just here in New York, but around the country, who are reaffirming their commitment to Lower Manhattan. One of the things they call for is communications redundancy. There were things that were called choke points, where they had to share lines and information couldn't be accessed as quickly as possible if that one line went out. So as it is rebuilt, we are building in redundancy, particularly for the financial sector, so that they will be able to continue to be down here and not risk loss of ability to function globally if we do lose some of the telephone systems in the future.
Merrill Lynch, American Express, and this week Eurobrokers all have announced or in the process of moving all of their people back. In a couple of cases, they will wind up with more people in Lower Manhattan in the next few months than they had on September 10th. The Empire State Development Corporation and Economic Development Corporation of the city have worked together. There are a number of grant programs. Governor, you want to talk about?
Yeah, we have the Business Recovery Grant Program, which provides up to $300,000 in grants to small businesses, retailers, and medium-sized businesses that either commit to staying in business here or agree to relocate here as well. In addition, it provides funding for us to be able to negotiate on a company-by-company basis with the large employers in Lower Manhattan or large employers looking to come to Lower Manhattan. We do have the Residential Retention Program. Literally within 2 weeks of its announcement, there were more than 100 leases signed in one of the buildings in Battery Park City. It is working, and it is important to help. I want to just, for a moment here, thank Washington, our congressional delegation, Senators Schumer and Clinton, and our House delegation in a bipartisan way, and President Bush, because we have gotten $2.7 billion above what we're calling for rebuilding and reconstructing and repairing Lower Manhattan, specifically for helping the residents and helping businesses in Lower Manhattan. And it's that type of nonpartisan commitment from our delegation and the President that has helped us to have this program that is, I think it's more than almost 4,000 businesses that have actually gotten grants, and it's more than 73,000 workers who have already received grants under this program.
We had Century 21 open last week very successfully. There have been 2 new hotels and about to have a 3rd one opened. If you talk to the managers of these hotels, they will tell you that business is booming. People are coming back. Restaurants are reopening. You'll have the Tribeca Film Festival in May. But the days of just being able to walk into a restaurant in Lower Manhattan and find it empty, fortunately, are over. Restaurants will never be happy with too much business. They'll never get, but I think they will tell you that things are dramatically improving. Oops. Go back here. Sorry. Virtually all of the schools in the area have reopened, and that gets you to some extent back to normal life. And what we have to do is, to the extent we can, focus after the tactical level of improving transportation and getting people who work and live in Lower Manhattan back to being able to go about their daily lives. As I said earlier in the background, we do have an ongoing planning process where we will try to balance the need for certainly an appropriate memorial that we hope will be one that people for hundreds of years will look back and remember the terrible tragedy that befell us and those people whose lives were lost. And at the same time, we have an obligation to build up the area for those left behind. We've got to come out of this stronger than ever. We cannot let the terrorists defeat everything that they hate and everything that we cherish, our rights to lead our lives and raise our families and practice our religion and say what we want to say. We talked about the 2 temporary memorials, and those services will be on Monday. What we're trying to do is to balance the requests of the families for being able to be alone with the outpouring of sympathy from people throughout New York, throughout the state, throughout the country, throughout the world, to come and to pay their respects to those that were lost. The Lower Manhattan Development Corporation has been leading a lot of the effort. Governor, do you want to?
Yeah, they've done a tremendous job in pulling everything together. And you see that there are 11-member board of directors. We're going to expand that. It's worked extremely well, but talking with Chairman Whitehead and others, the city's going to make 3 more appointments. We've had this great partnership, so we're going to make the makeup of the board equal. One of the important roles, in addition to the planning that they've performed, is working in coordination with all the others. And our economic development team, Empire State Development, and the city's economic Development Corporation and the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation have worked extraordinarily well, and we're just confident that that will continue and that that partnership will allow us to rebuild Lower Manhattan to where it is not just where it was on the morning of September 11th, but comes back even stronger.
It is hard to list every single agency that has been helpful and cooperative. Here is just a first cut at trying to list them all, and I apologize for those we've left out. But the bottom line is, when you have something of this magnitude, it just takes an enormous number of people and agencies at all levels to help put things together and to make progress. And it's just hard to describe. Perhaps never in the history of government has a task this massive been undertaken, and there has been so much intergovernmental cooperation. We'll be happy, I guess, to take some questions.
Back up for just a second. And the thing that kind of caught my eye was when you talked about the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation. It's going to be expanded to how many members and why, and what does Mayor...
Instead of having 11, we'll have 14. Mike, as you know, the 4 mayors appointed, the 4 members appointed by the city were appointed by Mayor Giuliani. They're great members, and we want to keep them on the board. But I also think it's appropriate that Mike have the opportunity to add some members that he chooses. So he's going to add 3, and we'll have an equal number of city and state. We've had an equal partnership. It's worked extraordinarily well, and I'm confident it will continure to.
Hey, Mayor Bloomberg, when it comes to expanding the Board of Ed, you talked about too many cooks in the kitchen. You've now got a board that's joined by 3 people, 8 advisory boards. Are there going to be too many people having the same?
I think there's a fundamental difference. John Whitehead and Lou Thompson are running the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, and the board is there to give them some advice and ideas and to support them. In the case of education, that's not the structure. The Board of Ed is intimately involved in micromanaging all the way down, which is one of the reasons you don't want to expand it, you want to abolish it.
Mayor, in your mind, is there a kind of 5-year plan? Governments always have like a 5-year plan. Do you think, or can you say fairly confidently, that within 5 years, Lower Manhattan will be back to normal?
No, I think that within 5 years you will have lots of construction going on. You've got to remember that the World Trade Center was conceived in 1960. Ground was broken in 60, I forget the dates, but 67 perhaps, and it was completed in the early 70s. It takes a long time to build. What you have to do is balance the requirement to let lots of people give you input and ideas and run those ideas by each other, so you constantly improve the possibility of really making a long-term difference, and then you've got to go and build, and these things take some time.
Have you both seen an idea for Ground Zero that privately you like?
At this point, we're still waiting. The Lower Manhattan Development Corporation is putting in place its processes, and the actual redevelopment of Ground Zero is some step away. We talked, Mike mentioned the progress with the subway stations. One of the most important things that has to be done is to reconnect the path tubes to Lower Manhattan. That's going to take at least 1.5 years and perhaps 2 years of construction right below Ground Zero. So there is a lot of infrastructure construction that has to be done. So we're not rushing the process of coming up with a plan for Ground Zero. We think the important thing is to make sure it's a thoughtful plan that's developed in an inclusive process where we have significant input from the family members who lost their loved ones, from the firefighters and others who were there on September 11th, and as we move forward, that we do it intelligently and with the long term in mind. We're acting quickly on things like the interim new train at Ground Zero.
And a new Con Ed facility, which we
and
also
the new
need.
Con Ed facility. But we also have to act thoughtfully on the things that are going to be here for generations to come.
Adam? Well, there are a number of stakeholders here. There is the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation. There's the Port Authority that owns the land. There are some legal rights that Larry Silverstein has. There is a governor of New York State and a mayor of New York City. So you have lots of ability to get input. I think that what we've shown is that we can all work together. And if we could continue the progress that we've made in the last 6 months, we'd leave a heck of a legacy.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, the mayor and the governor are responsible, and we're proud to have that responsibility. We're equally proud to have tremendous professionals who are giving their time to help in extremely important ways and helping us to move forward, and doing so very successfully.
Also, just to show you how broad it is, we need the cooperation of Governor McGreevey.
Right.
And I think he has expressed his sympathy and his support, and that he will certainly help the governor with the Port Authority.
And one of the additional pieces that is extremely important for the success, and Ralph, we don't want Lower Manhattan to be back to where it was on September 11th. We want it to be better. And I think that we have the potential and infrastructure and other ways to make it better than it was on September 11th. One of the important elements is a Liberty Zone designation for Lower Manhattan. That requires the federal government to act. So it's not just those of us here and Governor McGreevey. We also need ongoing help from the federal government. I'm confident we're going to get that.
Yes.
As for the SOB ban, there was that economic research firm that came out with a number of like $1.5 billion if it were to continue through the year. When do you plan?
Time out. There was, I believe, a study paid for by the parking garage owners. And I think that's where you can end that question. There is...
When do you plan on?
We have said that we will revisit the subject after the West Side Highway is open, after the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel is open, and after we get a chance to see the impact of those openings on the traffic patterns. So far, the combination of the single occupancy ban, of the dramatic reduction in parking permits, and of the rigorous enforcement of parking regulations seems to have made a material difference in your ability to get around Lower Manhattan, and we don't want to end that ability. How you do it, we'll take a look at it then, and we're not going to commit now one way or another. We've tried something new, and it may in fact be working, and incidentally, I know of no independent assessment of economic activity that says it's down. I don't know of any that says it's up, but you can certainly make the case both ways.
Mayor, have you talked about a new Con Ed facility? Are you referring to 7 World Trade?
Con Ed is building a 7 World Trade
Does that
Center.
mean there's a decision to build a substation before you have a final?
The first basis of that is the substation, and everything else is built on top of that. And remember, there's going to be 2 substations, one hopefully done this summer, one done the year afterwards, but Con Ed needs both of them.
Con Ed will build the substations before Silverstein has a plan to...
Well, Silverstein's building would be on top of the substations. By definition, no matter what you do with number 7, you have to go ahead and do that.
There's been some complaints by small businesses that the grants are disproportionate for them as opposed to families who are victims of the terrorist attacks.
Well, the subsidies for the businesses come through the Empire State Development Corporation, the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, EDC. The monies for the families are a federal program administered separately by somebody that John Ashcroft had appointed. They're really totally separate chains of funding.
So has there any attention been paid to the fact that they're
Well, it isn't an either or. The governor has been able to get some funds and do a spectacular job, I think, to help businesses to the extent that we can, and the families, compensation for the families for their losses is just a total federal program. Both the state and the city have given their ideas, and I believe the final rules are being issued tomorrow, so we'll have to wait and see.
The federal program for the families, I believe, is a $5 billion appropriation for the families only. Our effort to help all of the businesses south of 14th Street, we have $1.2 billion in total for small businesses, large businesses, and everyone else. So obviously we cannot give the amount of assistance to an entity that families can receive under the other federal programs.
Sir?
Mr. Mayor, the Labor Department, as reported in the Times, reporting 132,000 jobs lost last year. Do any of you have any records to indicate that the slide has stopped, or is it continuing in terms of the erosion?
I think the general tone of the economy nationwide is that things seem to have stabilized. Whether they've turned around is more a definitional thing, but excuse me, while unemployment is still high in New York, it certainly has, in the last 3 months, has stopped going down, and even unemployment stopped going up, and in fact is even going down.
You talked about the possibility of reinstating the commuter tax in order to help try to recoup some of the...
We have not.
Mayor, Mr. Governor, and Chairman Whitehead, the LMDC had appointed itself a sort of temporary deadline of March 15th as a listening period. You're approaching that now. Can you talk about any plans that you may have going forward, how this is going to be dealt with, how to be reports by the advisory councils?
We would... step over to the microphone, please.
John, we'll give you the tall one.
Thanks.
He's sort of in the middle.
Somewhere
I was worried about that. Why don't you use this one? I feel better, John.
You think I'm closer to you than to the governor? I'm equally distant between the mayor and the governor, as you can see, just the position we want to have. March 15th will not be the end of our listening, our board listening to what people want. And those advisory boards will continue to operate and to advise the designated members of our board as to what that particular community wants to see happen. So that will continue, but the March 15th date is significant because that was really a date as to when we could start deciding things and making longer range plans. And that's what we will be doing, and I would expect that in the months following that we will be issuing a series, not a single announcement, but a series of announcements about the concepts of what we would like downtown Manhattan to be in the long run, what everybody should be working towards, things for people to take in mind who are working on different buildings and different areas of the work. We hope to make those increasingly specific as time goes on, with a series of announcements as we, with the approval of the mayor and the governor, make decisions.
Sir, you've had a question. Sorry, I'm just trying to get...
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. In the realm of transportation, the progress that you've made already, it seems that you have a unique opportunity out of this horror to perhaps make things even better than what they were before.
That's certainly the commitment of everybody involved.
How,
Exactly right.
with whatever specifics you can offer, you go about accomplishing that?
Well, I think one of the starts is that the MTA is talking about a whole new transportation facility built at the site. And while the subways will be back to roughly normal with the exception of Cortlandt Street in November, one of the reasons that the path tubes won't be back until a year later is that we're trying to do something that pulls together as much as possible.
Right. The path and the subway, and just one other example is the South Ferry train station. Subway station is, I think it's over 100 years old, very antiquated. The trains can't pull in the entire length. You have to move to the front of the train, and then it has to circle around in a loop. The MTA is looking at the possibility of having a modern 21st century station there and system so that people who get off the ferry from Staten Island or elsewhere will have access to a much improved subway service. So there are a lot of things that can be done, whether it's ferries, whether it's the path and the subways or others, and I'm sure LMDC is going to be coming up with other ideas to see how we can move forward.
There's been no new subway built to Lower Manhattan since the early 30s.
Yeah.
the other day about the nuclear threat in October. Could you explain what Governor Ridge did?
No, Governor Ridge just called and said he wanted to reassure me that their commitment to make sure we have seamless communication and that any credible information that they have is communicated to us immediately will be done. And I think we've seen since September 11th, it took about a month or even longer to get that communication improvement online. Governor Ridge didn't have an office. We didn't have an office for public security. The police department didn't have the special, I don't believe, the special terrorism network. So as the federal government, the state government, the city government have geared up our communications, Governor Ridge simply wanted to reassure us that they would provide whatever timely, credible information they had to our appropriate
And that
agencies.
was exactly the message that he gave to me when he called last night as well.
Let me follow up. Let me just follow up.
You'll have to ask Governor Ridge that.
Did Governor Ridge explain why he did not,
He-
why the federal government did not explain that threat?
He did not. He wasn't even there at the time.
Yeah, he wasn't there.
And what was the, do you believe that that the governor and the mayor should have been told? Did he say that the threat was not credible? Or what reason did the federal government?
I think it's important that we have information. There might be a very low-level credibility threat that the federal government has, but the city through its agencies or the state through its involvement with law enforcement across the state may have information that either says that it's not at all a threat or that in some way reinforces the credibility of the information they might have. So to the extent we can share information, it allows us to be better prepared and prevent future
Sir, wait,
incidents.
you've had a question. We're just trying to give everybody one chance. Sir.
Governor Pataki, have you made any changes to your proposed Liberty Zone package now that you have a better idea of your planning, the bond part of it, the cash component?
Yeah, we do have it's a $5.5 billion program. The president, in fact, included the $5.5 billion proposal in his executive budget. I spoke with Senator Schumer today, who's working hard. Yesterday, who's working hard to get it through the Senate. The House has passed a version of the Liberty Zone linked to some other elements that probably won't pass in the Senate. But I think there is a commitment, certainly from our delegation and from the president, to pass a Liberty Zone bill. And I think it would be enormously, enormously helpful. You know, it's not just rebuilding the infrastructure and creating the office space. It's creating the economic climate where people want to locate here, they want to work here, they want to invest and create jobs, and having a Liberty Zone would be an important element of that.
Last question here.
People want to move on, but there's still a lot of concern about the air quality. You mentioned something at the beginning.
You cannot go downtown without tripping over an air quality measuring device. I think every creditable scientist at a federal, state, and city level believes that the air quality is at the baseline meaning what it was on September 10th. We are trying to coordinate all of that under OEM more so that people understand we do take it seriously. So there's one place to go if there are any questions. And we're also trying to expand the monitoring within buildings so that people can be assured that in their school or their home or their office or their store that the air quality is acceptable. But let me emphasize that there is no evidence that the air is above the baseline that it was on September 10th. So thank you.
Reactivating the old fire shelters. Would you consider, sir, reactivating the old fallout shelters that are scattered around the city?
I don't think that that would make any sense. With nuclear technology today, it isn't the sort of thing that would add anything to anybody's safety. It would probably give people a false sense of safety. The fact of the matter is we have to support our intelligence and law enforcement services worldwide to prevent any kind of further terrorism, whether it's nuclear, biological, or more conventional. And we have to make sure that we can respond to the much more likely smaller tragedies that befall us every day. And that's what law enforcement and agencies and emergency response agencies and intelligence agencies at the federal, state, and city level are trained to do, and that's where we're going to focus our resources. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anti-terrorism efforts were discussed today at the White House as the chairman and